Hello and welcome to our fabulous listeners. I'm your host, Moira Geary, and this is your Positivity Project. For those of you that don't know me, I'm an author and speaker, and I have a personal development company. And I specialise in teaching people who are stressed, overwhelmed, procrastinating, and are driven by fear how to live more enriched, courageous, and calmer lives.
Now, in your work and your website and your published material, you talk a lot about people pleasing and the negativity that surrounds that. Could you explain that to us?
I absolutely can, and I can even help if people are listening and they'd like to find maybe one or two ways that might help them to manage it. But people pleasing is it's a little bit like a natural instinct, and a lot of the time people pleasing will come from our conditioning. So our conditioning, meaning that what we see as children between the ages of 0 and 5, that period of our lives is called what we call the imprint period, and that's all research done by a guy called Massey, Maurice Massey, if anybody wants to look it up. But basically what's happening there is that we haven't really created what we call critical faculty in our subconscious mind. I don't want to get too technical. And so when we don't have that, basically everything we see and we perceive, so the child that's running around the kitchen on the sweeping brush talking about their horse, to them that is a horse. So, everything, their imagination mixed in with what we call reality. But when all of that's happening and a child is experiencing and seeing messages from their parents, whether that's through their behavior or through their language, meaning be good, sit down, be quiet, behave, and a sense of putting other people first. Because if you don't put other people first, then you might be such a good person, or you might be a little bit bold, or you might be misbehaving. So I'm not saying that everybody is conditioned like that, but I'm sure a lot of people listening will relate to that.
Does that also include the kind of threats that you get as a child?
Yes.
If you eat your carrots, it'll be good for you,
Yes.
and I'll give you a bar of chocolate.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're not here to, I'm a parent myself, and we're not here to say that parents are doing anything bad. I think everybody does the best that they can with what they've got. And actually, it's really the responsibility, and it'd be hard to say the responsibility of a child, because they're doing this subconsciously, but they're picking up on the information subconsciously and they're putting meaning on it. So a lot of us grow up with this subconscious need to put other people before us, because when we do, it makes us feel good about ourselves, or it makes us feel that we're not bold or we're not bad.
It also makes us feel generous, and that's a good thing, I would have thought.
Yes, absolutely. But when we feel generous, and I don't mean to say but, and when we feel generous, that also, there's a payoff for us. So when I feel generous, I would then ask myself, what does that mean about me? It means I'm a good person. So it's like I'm fulfilling something within myself too by being generous, even though I'm being generous to be nice to somebody, but there's always a payoff for us, and that's across the board.
How does all of that then relate to people pleasing?
Here we go then. So if I'm going around with that conditioning whereby I believe that, or I've been conditioned to put other people first, etc., because that means I'm a good girl or I'll be a nice person, then when it comes to the point that I do it so often that I am exhausted helping everybody else and I'm getting resentful, but I can't stop myself.
Right, it's become a habit.
Exactly, it's become a habit. It's like it's a subconscious program that we have. And if we were to say no to somebody, then what would everybody else be talking about me or whatever? And a lot of the time we don't even consciously think like that. It's just happening subconsciously. So I meet an awful lot of people that turn up at events, etc., and they say to me, I'm absolutely exhausted. When we drill down and work out, why are you exhausted? What's going on? Well, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do the other, and I have this one. And I stop and say, okay, so the words I have to, where are they coming from? So the person going, well, actually, maybe I don't have to, but I can't stop. So we look at where it's come from, get a sense of where it's come from, and then if there are belief systems underneath that about to be a good girl or to be a good boy, I need to, that could be a belief system. So we might work on that. But also, if you look at the pattern of people pleasing, is it really benefiting the people that we're pleasing? That needs to be questioned. Sometimes it is, and other times it's actually quite disempowering for them. So if we're constantly going in and rescuing people, it's almost like we're denying them the opportunity to learn, to evolve, or to grow.
Would that be, it occurs to me, would that be a kind of misplaced kindness?
it could be considered that. And
Yeah.
again, every situation and every individual, and it would be different. So, but really, all my work is about investigating. So I just ask people really good questions so that they come to their truth and they work it out to themselves. I would never sit with somebody and decide I know what they're doing and why they're doing it, but I'm really good at asking them good questions so that they can come to that realization.
I think I've got a new name for you, and it's not just the recombobulator, it's a detective of the subconscious.
Maybe. So that's how people pleasing starts and happens. And if somebody wants to stop the habit, if they decide that it's actually not serving them, because again, that's always the question I would ask about a behavior. It's not right for any of us to decide that someone should stop or start a behavior. The question always is to ask the person, is that behavior serving you? If it's not serving you, then in terms of people pleasing, one thing I often say to people, which is a great idea, when somebody comes at you and says, oh, will you this, or will you that, or will you the other, it's almost like you just, and it won't always happen every time, but just practice.
Is it will you do?
Will you do this, or will you do that, or
will you help
me out, or whatever. So what you do is you just take a pause, catch your breath, take a pause. And the answer to give at that moment is, leave that with me, and I'll get back to you.
Oh, that's excellent. Politicians say it all the time.
Do they?
Oh, they never commit.
Please
Leave
don't
that
put
with
me.
And I'll get back. Sorry.
Please do not put me in a box of a politician. I'll tell
just
you
done
why.
it.
I'll tell you why it's important to do this, because this is really important, where you can step back and you can make an informed decision on whether you're going to serve the person by helping them out or serve yourself. But basically just look at the whole thing and make a decision on it. Now, what you've not said no, so the person knows that you possibly will, but also they know that you've actually broken a pattern. You've broken a pattern with them where you've always said yes, but you haven't done it in a nasty way. So it's a very gentle, just leave it with me. Then you come back and you think, okay, is it going to serve me and them in a positive way for everybody if I do that? And if it is, absolutely go back to them and say, that's no problem. I'm sorted. I can do that for you.
And can you teach us how to find the courage to go back and say, I'm terribly sorry, mate, but I can't go on like this anymore?
That's the next piece. So if you're going to say yes, then you go back and you say yes. If it's not appropriate for you, then it's important that you go back and you say, I would love to help you, and be very honest, I'd love to help you, and I know I've helped you in the past, and unfortunately this time, and if there's a reason, you give the reason why you can't. And it might be just that I need to do, and it might be something of self-care for yourself. And the first time you do that, it is going to be uncomfortable. And I would never say to anybody, please don't lie about, making up things that need to be in place. But at the same time, it might be okay to put something in there that you hadn't thought of. So let's just say I was very overwhelmed and I was stressed and things were going on and I was busy, or I was just tired and somebody asked me to do something. I can step back and prioritize myself. So I can make a decision in that moment that actually I need to go to bed early tonight. So it's absolutely okay, or I need to go for a massage, or I need to go and talk to a friend, or I need to, whatever it is, to look after me. And it is absolutely okay to make that decision there and then and put yourself first. As they say, you can't pour from an empty cup. Isn't that what the expression?
That is exactly
absolutely
what they
So it's
say.
important that we fill ourselves up. Then absolutely go back and help the person the next time they ask or whatever. But sometimes, even in the saying, leave it with me and I'll get back to you, that what we call a pattern interrupt can be very powerful, because if the other person mightn't even realize that they're asking you all the time. And it's not that we want to be nasty or mean or rude, but sometimes a pattern needs to be interrupted.
They don't know, because if we think back to before the mobile phones,
Yes.
when now you can make all the calls for free, basically, or pay the monthly thing, and phone calls cost money, there would be people ringing you up, and then you'd say to your best mate afterwards, she only rings me when she's looking for something.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's very helpful indeed.
Great.